All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our inside out step 1xx project. To do that, our very first step in our workflow would be to go and create a repository. I could do that either through using this button, or I could come up here and do that. I'm on my profile page, by the way, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click new, and we're going to call this repository 1xx. I'm going to leave it public, and I'm going to, of course, initialize it with a README file, something we always like to do. And I'm going to create my repository. That's simple. We have a repository created, and while we're here, we might as well go ahead and set up our Git pages, GitHub pages. That's what allows us, especially with HTML5 code, to see the results of whatever branch or whatever we select. So I'm going to click on settings, and then I'm going to scroll down here to GitHub pages, and I'm going to tell it that I want it to use the master branch, and we'll click save. At this point, we'll go ahead and we'll leave that go. It has to bake for a little while. We can go ahead and open it, and you'll see it's not found yet, and that's fine. It takes it a little bit. Even after it's green, if I refresh, sometimes you'll see it'll come up in green. It can take it a little bit for it to get going. So with that, go ahead, and I'm just going to back out to my code view there so I can see things. Now that we have our repository, our GitHub repository created, the next step we want to do is create the folder we're going to work in on our local machine in our local host. I'm not going to cover localhost in here, but the expectation is that you already have localhost set up, enabled, and working. Localhost is what allows us to see our web pages on our machine without posting them to a server. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll open up our folder system. We can see right here is where my localhost and your localhost should be on the C drive, WAMP64 www folder. And if I open up my commander, which is what we will use in all assignments and projects, I will back out of where I am right now, and actually I'll do a clear and clean that up a little bit. So at this point, I know that I'm in my WAMP 64 www folder, and I'm safe to clone. And so I want to make sure that I have that link for the repository I just created copied. Come back out here, and I'm going to say git clone, and then that link. And what it'll do is it'll actually create that working folder for me to go ahead and start working and getting my work done in. And so we'll go ahead and we'll hit clone, and at this point I should be able to cd 1xx into that directory that I created, and you can see I'm inside the directory that I created. I'm on my master branch, and just to verify some things, I'll go ahead, I can run ls, and I can see that the readme file is in there. I can run git status, and I can see that my branch is up to date. Of course it is. I just pulled it down. There's nothing to commit, and we're good to go. At this point, now we have our folder, our structure set up on our local machine and on our GitHub. And the next thing that we want to do is we're going to go ahead and go out to egavashosti, and we're going to log in. We're going to create our subdomain. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to my domains, hosted domains. And I know that I don't have the 1xx. I do have a lot of subdomains created. So I'm going to go ahead and create a subdomain, and I'm going to make sure that I put in 1xx, and I'm going to make sure I select my domain, and I'm going to hit add host. At this point, it should have created my subdomain for me, and I should be able to go ahead and expand this. Have a look, and we can see that my subdomain is right there. The next thing we want to do while we're in here, before we go ahead and go anywhere else, is we want to go ahead, and you can see here I have this is your SSL column in here, and the things in red are ones that don't have an SSL cert, and the ones with the little lock shiny crown on it, whatever you want to say. They have a Let's Encrypt SSL, and Let's Encrypt SSL is a free service to try to help people do better with securing their sites, and we can get more into that at another time. But what we're going to do at this time is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go over this little gear and click Edit Subdomain. In order to attach an SSL, we have to use a certain IP address, and on our servers, it's available shared IPs for SSL. And you'll see when I select this, it automatically puts Request Let's Encrypt SSL down here under Secure Socket Layers. You want to make sure that that's there, and we'll go ahead and I know it should say save, right? Edit host is a little confusing, but we'll go ahead and we'll click Edit host. It can take a little bit because it's basically going in and doing some server configurations, and it's doing more than just saving a simple change. It's actually updating some things. And if we expand and we go in and we look at our subdomain and we click on it, what happens now is we can go ahead and click on the subdomain, so we open it up in a new tab, and we can see that it is the initial marketing page until we make some changes in here is there, and it is available. If we try to go on HTTPS, I doubt it's going to work yet. It does take a little bit of time because, as I said, it's not just a simple configuration change. These changes have to go through to the servers, routers, things like that. So we'll go ahead and we'll stop, and we'll come back and we'll revisit it in a little while. But for now, we now have our subdomain created, and while we're in here, there's one more thing we want to do. Sorry about that. Here we go. We want to go and create our FTP user so that we can access this, and we do this by going to Files, FTP Accounts. Under the FTP account, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new FTP account, and we're going to name it student. And you probably by now have the password memorized in there, but let's go ahead and put raccpass in to be sure. Let's make sure that we have the subdomain selected that we want this for, and we want this for the 1x well, whatever your domain name is. And we also want to make sure that this path is equal to, so this is the root of our server that's available to us, and then this is the subdomain folder that we want to be pointed to. So when we log in as this user, it will point us directly to this folder, and we'll hit Add FTP Account. Now, of course, whenever we create an FTP account, we're going to go set up our Dreamweaver. One thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we copy the FTP name, because everything, all the information we need is right inside of there, except for the password. And we're okay with the password. We know what our password is. And so now it's time to go ahead and open up Dreamweaver. And what we want to do is we want to define a new site. We want to call this site 1xx. All of our work is going to go into here. And so now we also want to go ahead and we want to go out and select the path to that folder, to the 1xx folder. And we can see we're inside our local host. We have our 1xx folder selected. And while we're in here, we're going to go ahead and set up our new server as well. So we'll click on the plus, add new server, and we're just going to call this 1xx. Well, actually, we have the information, so let's paste it up there, and let's get rid of the student underscore. If we do that, that's the only time we have to make an edit, because now in the username, we can paste the full path that we have, the student underscore, and so on and so forth. Go ahead and grab this and copy it, because our FTP address is exactly the same thing. Now we'll go ahead and we'll put our password in, raccpass, and we'll give it a test. And there we go. That's usually the problem. You can see that I put the web URL in here for me as well, and we'll just go ahead and leave that what it is, and we'll click save. And then we'll save again. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and just, take a look, make sure things look right. And if I click on this and go to remote server, I should see my index.html. If I go to my local view, I should see my README file, which is great. we're in a good forward motion here. And so now we know we're pretty good to get started and get working. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click on the README file and say edit or open with Dreamweaver. If you just double click on it, it will not open for you. And what I'm going to put in here is the name of my subdomain, the link to my subdomain, and you'll see why in a couple minutes. And let's go ahead and make that secure as well. I'm going to save that and I'm going to close that window. The next thing that I'm going to do is we're looking to get our repository kind of just going, get ourselves started. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click and say new file, and I'm going to make it my index.html. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to change my view to code view so we can see it a little better. And in the document title, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in inside out project, and then I like putting a little pipe and 1xx. I'm also going to copy that, and down here in the body of my document I'm going to go ahead and put an h1 and paste that in there as well. Just gives us a visual when we go out to check our website to see and confirm that things have been done correctly. And while I'm in here, I'm going to apply my source formatting, which does my indentation for me, keeps things clean for me. And I'm going to save that. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to right click on here and say Synchronize. And I'm right clicking on my primary site, and I could also do it through this button as well. And what I'm looking to do is I want to get rid of, if I go out and take a look real quick, and we see what's on here, we have this file still here. We want that gone, if nothing else. So what I'm going to do is say get and put, and I always use the get and put. You can go ahead and say put newer files to remote, get newer files from remote, get and put. But I like to do the preview. Take a look. My window keeps coming up over there. And I'm going to put the index that I built in the README file. And it's asking me if I want to get this. And I'm actually going to highlight the index.xhtml. And I'm going to mark it for deletion. And I did it by clicking on this little trash can. And then I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to hit yes. Do I really want to delete these? Of course I do. At this point, if I come up here and I check my remote server, it should, and it does, reflect what my local server does. And if you notice, the folders change color, by the way, when you're looking at local and remote. Local is normally gray, remote is normally yellow. All right, so now let's go out to the website and let's confirm. And you can see that our changes have taken place and our server is pretty much ready to go. Let's go ahead and test our HTTPS again. It can take quite a while for that to actually work out. So at this point, I don't want to keep bothering it. I'll just stop and we'll revisit that later on. Cool. So we've done that. We tried to validate our SSL. Like I said, you can just keep trying to do that every once in a while. It really doesn't matter. You can work without it. And as I said, you know, if it takes a while, it takes a while. And we'll just let it roll at this point. But now, to finish getting ready, before we move on to step 100, to finish getting ready for our project, the next thing I think that I want to do is let's go ahead and test out localhost. You can see that bombed out the HTTPS. That's fine. We can see our GitHub. Our GitHub is ready to go. And now I'm going to check out localhost as well and just see, make sure that what I have on localhost under 1xx agrees with what I have under my my hosted version. And we can see, with the exception of the fact that I have zoom set on that, we're pretty much exactly the same thing locally as we are on our remote. Our GitHub is still just our README file because we haven't done anything with that yet. And so that's our next step. Let's go ahead and let's take a look in Commander. Let's run a git status. And we can see, of course, the dreaded note file. We'll just ignore that and pretend it's not there. We have modified README, so we did do an update to the README. We added the link in there, and we added the index.html file. So we want to go ahead and do git add, period. We'll run git status again because we're kind of new and we like to look at what's going on, and we can see that it's grabbed those files. And so at this point, we're going to go ahead and do a git commit. You can see I got all kinds of commits going on, and what I want to do is, my initial push from local to GitHub to begin our project is the comment that I'm adding in there, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. We'll do git status again just for fun, see what's going on. We look good, and now it's time to do a git push. We want to do our git push. We want to tell Git, hey Git, we want to push files. We want it to go to origin. Origin is just the alias to the address up here, of course. And then master, we're telling it we want to push the master branch. So if I hit enter, it comes up and it asks me for a username and a password. This happens sometimes. So Brian R. Savage is my username. Now if you watch when I type in my password, it does nothing. It shows me nothing. I just typed in my password. You didn't see anything happen there, but when I hit enter, of course it went ahead and it pushed my files out. So at this point, I'm still in my 1x, pushed my master branch. If I come up here and I go in, I can see that my master branch was pushed out. We can see we pushed that link in there. So that we have a link to our files. HTTPS is not ready yet. We can see that our index.html is reflecting what it is. And if you remember, we set up that Git Pages. And if I come out here to Git Pages, what happens is now it's going to show me whatever master branch has on it. So it's just another way of sharing your work, especially when you're working with clients and things like that. It's a great way to get your information out. So at this point, we have, just a recap, we have our GitHub page, our GitHub repository created and updated with the information. We have our local host, which is holding the folder, which has the repository in it and also serving up the local. And we have our remote, which we're waiting, our web server, which we're waiting for HTTPS to grab a hold of. Our master branch is good and we're up to date, and our Dreamweaver is set up and pointing to the right place. So at this point, we have our project set up and we are ready to get rolling.